Oh. Good evening, and welcome to WORT's inaugural candidate debate for the 2021 spring elections. My name is Jonah Chester, and I'm the 6 p.m. news producer here at WORT.
And I'm Will Chochi, co-editor of the Daily Cardinal, one of UW-Madison's student newspapers, and I also help host a segment called Cardinal Call on the WORT local news.
We asked Will to join us for our inaugural debate because of the nature of tonight's debate, the district representing UW-Madison and campus neighborhoods on the Madison Common Council. Thanks so much for joining us tonight, Will. In just a minute, we'll talk about the format of tonight's debate. But first, I want to give credit where credit is due. A huge shout out to Jade Isiri Ramos, our producer for all debates this season. If you have questions for candidates in upcoming debates, you can email her your questions at Jade, that's Jade, at WORTFM.org. I should also mention you can see all the candidates up for election as well as these debates once they are posted online at WORTFM.org. Just click the Spring 2021 Election tab. And if you have questions, complaints, or comments, please contact our news director, Shali Pittman, at Shali, that's CHALI, at WORTFM.org, or you can reach her by phone at 608-321-9586. And now, on to tonight's debates.
Our candidates tonight are Juliana Bennett and Ayomi Obuseh. They're vying to represent District 8. If you are not familiar with District 8, it's primarily the UW-Madison campus and surrounding communities defined by Lake Mendota on one side and a majority of the UW-Madison campus at the center. Incumbent Max Prestigiacomo is not running.
Juliana Bennett is a junior at UW-Madison and pursuing degrees in political science and finance. Originally from a suburb of Chicago, Illinois, Juliana grew up in Beloit and later graduated from Madison West High School with honors. Juliana co-founded the UW-Madison BIPOC Coalition and engaged in student advocacy through the Associated Students of Madison. She's endorsed by ASM Chair Matthew Mitnick, Dane County Board Supervisors Lena Hazel and Taryn Peterson, among others.
And Ayomi Obuseh is a student at UW-Madison and youth activist and organizer in Madison. She's the co-founder and executive director of Impact Demand, a Black youth-led organization that formed this summer during Black Lives Matter protests. She's endorsed by outgoing alder Shiva Bidar and Madison School Board member Ananda Murilli.
Notably, both candidates are endorsed by Madison School Board members Ali Muldrow and Savion Castro, MMSD Dean of Students Michael Jones, and community leader, Urban Triage founder, and fellow candidate Brandy Grayson. In a moment, we'll turn to the candidates for opening statements. But first, the rules. Each candidate will have 5 cumulative minutes per question. The first candidate will start with 3 minutes to answer. Then the second candidate will get 5 minutes for a response and answer. Finally, we'll go back to the first candidate for a 2-minute response. We'll alternate who answers first. Most of our questions will be for the both of you. WORT's news team has collaboratively put together questions touching on the major issues facing the council and this district. We'll take viewer questions in the second half of this debate. Please submit your questions on our live stream or by filling out our form on our website. Before closing statements, we will have one candidate-specific question for each of you. Opening and closing remarks will be just 3 minutes.
Our producer, Jade, will be our timekeeper today. She'll hold up this yellow card when you have 30 seconds left, and this pink card when the time is up. Mics will be muted when it's not your turn.
Before going live, we flipped a coin, and Juliana will begin with opening remarks. Juliana, the floor is yours.
Okay. Woo, this is so exciting. Hi, thank you all for having me here today. Thank you, WORT FM, for having me here. And thank you everyone that's viewing this and engaging in local government. Right now is a really pivotal time in our city's history where we can really reshape Madison to fulfill our actual needs for affordable housing, reimagining public safety and sustainability, and engaging our voices in these processes. I come from a working class family. My dad was a retired veteran and small business owner. And my mom was a registered nurse who was the sweetest person you'd ever know. Together, they instilled in me the values of hard work, resilience, and just working to uplift the community. I came to UW-Madison with these sentiments and just high hopes for the opportunities in Madison. And while I've made lifelong friends, some of whom were in celery, I've also been greeted with the dark underside of housing instability and financial hurt, and just the overall extra stress of being a student of color at this predominantly white institution. These sentiments, along with the Black Lives Matter movement, has shown me that when we move together with passion and an undaunting will to see change, we can and we will make change. Therefore, I co-founded the UW-Madison BIPOC Coalition, worked with ASM to pass legislation such as the vote of no confidence in UW-PD, and held university administration, including Chancellor Blank, accountable. Along with campus area stuff, I've been an outspoken advocate on a city council level for issues pertaining to that affect us, and through sitting through countless city committee meetings and most notably the 6-hour-long budget hearings, it became very clear that those currently in positions of power are not here for us. Therefore, I want to break away from that narrative and make a Madison that's truly focused on the youth voice. My campaign is completely funded by the community and powered by UW students. I've received key endorsements, as we noted before, from Matthew Mitnick and Elena Hassel. And I have a proven track record of changing the minds of the Beckiest of Blanks in our city. When elected, I will not only represent, but also amplify and include all voices to make the city that is sustainable, equitable, and a place where everyone can call home.
All right, thank you very much, Juliana. Ayomi, it's now your turn on the mic. As a reminder, you get 3 minutes. Begin.
Hi, good evening, everyone. I'm so excited to speak to you, especially on such a historic day. We watched the first Black and Asian American become Vice President of the United States and take her oath of office. This was a glass-breaking moment, and she did it with dignity and grace. Running for office is the American dream, and I'm proud and honored to run with the full support of my community to address issues that we've been facing for years, notably endorsed recently by a state senator, LaTanya Johnson, Brandy Grayson, as we mentioned earlier, and so many more people. Originally, I just put out a post and let people know that I was running, and just to see the amount of support was overwhelming. But, you know, we've been doing this work for years. I first moved to Madison 2016, which was a very scary time, especially as an immigrant child. And it became clear and immediate that Madison was a bubble. And we weren't talking about issues of oppression because of the idea of progression. And so this summer, we were able to see that glass being broken. And finally, we're able to have conversations that we should have been having 5 years ago, especially when Tony Robinson was shot and killed. Those in power are not listening to BIPOC and marginalized voices who are directly affected by these legislations. So I'm running with the support to tackle police reform, affordable housing, environmental justice, and social justice issues. As a Black immigrant woman, I can see the intersectionality between these issues that affect different communities. This summer especially, we saw such a mobilization of people, and now many activists are running for office, and it's a spark of hope that brought these protests together and is spreading like wildfire nationally. So I hope to continue to amplify our voice like we've been doing for years, and invite everyone to vote Ayomi for Alder and visit our website, ayomiforalder.vote. Thank you.
All right, thank you, candidates, for your opening statements. We'll now turn to the main portion of our debate this evening, the questions. Now, over the past 10 months, both of you have emerged as prominent protest organizers here in Madison. During those demonstrations and in statements outside of those events, you've both leveled a number of critiques against the Common Council for what you see as their inaction towards police and carceral reform. How do you plan on dealing with the council's bureaucracy while still pushing through the reforms you've been advocating for the past several months? Juliana, since you started with your opening statement, we will start with Ayomi. As a reminder, Ayomi, you get 3 minutes off the bat. Your time begins now.
Yeah, so when addressing the issues, specifically the Civilian Oversight Board, so Impact Demand was instrumental in getting the Civilian Oversight Board on the table, as well as other issues regarding, for example, decriminalizing marijuana and talking about facial recognition. And these policies were not only addressed, but passed. So I think it's, following through, holding people accountable, and making sure that when we put a policy or group in place, such as, for example, the Civilian Oversight Board, that it has the full intention that we planned it to be. So being at the forefront, including conversations and being, like, for example, if we're talking about the new police chief, the Civilian Oversight Board should definitely been included in that process. And that is a perfect example in ways that we have put together organizations or committees that the community has asked for, and seen a lack of action on the side of the mayor, for example. And it's important that when we run for office, that we use that mobilization that we've seen to address these issues of not following through and having a level of transparency. So when elected, I definitely plan on using social media as a way to connect to constituents. That's something we're seeing right now, having live streams, doing town halls. And these issues that we're talking about have been addressed years prior when looking at the ad hoc committee suggestions. So I have a whole binder, and I've been doing this research since I was in high school, since I first, came here and was just like trying to understand the system, because it was a really scary time, but also to keep myself and my family safe, it was important to understand it. So I have a whole binder filled with the ad hoc committee suggestions. And the biggest thing that they've mentioned was transparency. So that is definitely something that we need right now from our local officials, and something that I plan to continue doing, not just for the campaign, but when elected.
All right, Juliana, you have 5 minutes for your rebuttal, any rebuttals you may have to Ayomi's opening or to that in the answer to that question, as well as your response to the prompt itself. Time starts now.
Great, thank you so much. So when addressing this question posed of police reform, at the moment in time, we are so beyond police reform. Now is the time where District 8 constituents want to see the defunding of the police. They want to see a city where they have actual public safety that address their actual needs. I started this off with the BIPOC Coalition in having the March on Madison event, in which hundreds of young people came and marched across Camp Randall, marched across 333 East Campus Mall, all the way down to the Capitol, which we notably called the battlefield. And in this moment, it became very clear that we need to defund the police, we need to refund the community, and address the root cause problems of public safety on this campus. I plan to translate the movement to defund the police into actual budget amendments, ban chemical munitions, end the police service academy, and end the K-9 unit, so that we can take millions of our tax and tuition dollars and better reallocate it to things that actually help our needs. 9 out of 10 calls to UW-PD are mental health related. 9 out of 10 calls. We need to be working to answer the call of mental health in the greater campus area. In this, we need to invest in the CAHOOTS, Crisis Assistance Helping Out on the Streets model, which will provide mental health people that are mental health trained professionals that are trained in de-escalation and mental health. And I'm already working on this. In fact, I have a meeting next week with campus administration to add and ensure the UW-Madison comes into the CAHOOTS model. Furthermore, in terms of the Police Civilian Oversight Board, I've read the ad hoc committee suggestions, literally front to back. And I know that OIR report number 144, independent monitor, should be appointed. And we need to ensure that the independent monitor is free of political infiltration from the mayor and any other council member. Additionally, I am working to get appointed to the Public Safety Review Committee in order to enact these actual changes that will help us in terms of reimagining public safety.
All right, Ayomi, you now have 2 more minutes to respond to Juliana's statements.
Yeah, when talking about police reform, it is crucial that we address mental health and how, especially MPD has been, trying to enforce policies in which they are militarizing themselves instead of addressing the concerns of the constituents of our community. I'm really close to the Tony Robinson family, and that is a perfect example of where you can see mental health services needed in a case where an unarmed 19-year-old was shot and killed. Somebody that had so many connections to this community, and we still are seeing the effects of his death today. So when we talk about mental health services, this is real, especially to all those activists and protesters that we saw day to day. The conversations that we had in the streets, we're talking about what the city needs to provide for us. And we were talking about this and advocating for it. And just to support each other means to have money to invest. And so we have to look at that budget. To begin anything as an alder, knowing that we are in a budget deficit and we can't do any of the initiatives that we are talking about or plan to talk about without addressing the budget. So it's crucial that we look at ways in which we are saving money. The Cahoots program saves the city millions of dollars, and those dollars would then be invested into many community programs, not just regarding mental health, but talking about housing first initiatives. Because if you want to help people, you have to house them first. You have to give stability. And like we kind of mentioned about the ad hoc committee suggestions, another thing that they've mentioned was, of course, transparency and talking about having, sorry, I see the 30 minutes, talking about having de-escalation programs. Thank you.
All right, thank you both for those responses. Our next question, as representatives of District 8, you will be primarily representing the UW-Madison campus and by extension, most of its student body. Throughout the COVID-19 pandemic, relationships between the university and local government have been strained, as the two have argued over their respective responses to the pandemic. Keeping in mind that the campus proper does not fall under the city's jurisdiction, but rather the state's, what role do you believe the District 8 Alder plays in facilitating communication between the UW's leadership and the cities? And since we began with Ayomi for the last question, let's go to Juliana first, and you will have 3 minutes.
Great. So in talking about the campus and university, yes, District 8 residents, we are somewhat strained and accountable to both the university and to the city. And I think in this question, it shows that I have been always there for young people, for students. Just look at the take, for example, the meeting that we had today at 9 in the morning. We found out that the meeting was here for the student COVID-19 Student Relief Fund only 12 hours before the meeting. And in this meeting, myself and other student leaders, most notably, shout out to UW-Madison Dreamers, came to this meeting and spoke in support of the COVID-19 Student Relief Fund, which will reallocate ASM's $2 million of relief to the Tenant Resource Center. And in this meeting, I shared my own personal story of hardships, and I heard other people share their personal stories of hardships. And still, I was frustrated and absolutely upset with how people that were in the positions of power that could make this student COVID-19 relief fund pass, were actively working against it. We're actively trying to find a way that this relief fund couldn't pass. And this is unacceptable on our campus and in our city. So I know what it feels like to sit across the room from Chancellor Blake, look her in the eye, and tell her that she is not doing enough. And do the same to the mayor, and do the same to city council members. And I plan to do so in city council. Therefore, I'm so thankful to have the support of Matthew Mitnick, the ASM chair, Elena Hassel, the Dane County Board Supervisor, and across the bodies of campus, city, and county, we will work on joint legislation to make the actual changes that we need to see. Furthermore, I know what it means to get results from passing this legislation, because I've done it. We've done it in ASM. We've done it with the vote of no confidence in UW-PD. We've done it with working for pass-fail grading, and we've done it for international telecommuting students. Therefore, I plan to bridge the gap, yes, between city and campus, and not just be an advocate, but also an instrument of change. That's who I plan to be.
All right. Thank you, Juliana, for that. Now, Ayomi, it'll be your turn to answer the question and to respond to anything that Juliana said. You will have 5 minutes. Begin.
Yeah, so addressing the question of our job as a facilitator, basically the role of an alder is a liaison between the constituents and the city. So talking about off-campus housing, realizing that we don't have jurisdiction over areas in which the campus owns property. So we have to talk about increasing public transit, informing students, using social media. As an organizer and as an activist, of course, I'm involved in ASM, the neighborhood associations, and I've been in meetings talking about ways in which we are addressing issues related to international students, immigrant issues. That's things that you can do as a student, but things that you can do as an alder have to be rooted in the community and understanding the power that we have. So, of course, using social media to communicate with students is my priority, but also it has to be those nitty-gritty things. Most students don't know what an alder does. An alder takes care of the salts that you have to put on the street. An alder takes care of development issues. An alder takes care of talking about the trash, things that you may not typically notice day to day. That's the role of an alder. And to do that work, it's not pretty. It takes long hours. There was a meeting that went until 2 a.m. talking about police violence and talking about the violence of the community, really, and trying to say that protesting and stuff was dangerous while we were protesting Jacob Blake's officer that wasn't charged. So in the streets, while we were marching, we were also on the phone to speak at city council meetings. The role of an alder takes passion. It takes a sense of leadership that we've seen day to day with Impact Demand, especially. We have so many members within Impact Demand that are UW students, and realizing that it's beyond UW. It has to be rooted in the community for something to last, but having relationships with university organizations and building coalitions. When we want to invest in different programs, you have to have relationships. You have to have experience. I've worked with the city council, I've worked with the state capitol, I've worked on a congressional campaign, and I've built those relationships with those in power, as well as organized with Freedom Inc., Urban Triage, Planned Parenthood, all these big name organizations and nonprofits here at a local level, because that's what you're going to need to move forward. You need someone that can move things fast with the urgency, that understanding that people are at the other ends of those policies, but also effectively with legislation that works, and having people on your team that understand how it will work at a city-wide level. Thank you.
All right, thank you. And now, Juliana, you will have another 2 minutes for your final rebuttal on this question. Go ahead.
Sure. So in this, and in thinking about building a coalition, I've literally co-founded the UW-Madison BIPOC Coalition which has the mission of coalescing students of color and student organizations on campus in order to build a unified voice to amplify and include all students and ensure that um, our needs are being heard, recognized, and respected. Therefore, as the campus alder, yes, you can bet on it. I will bring in Wisconsin Black Student Union, Wangshik, Metro Daily UW, Dreamers of UW-Madison to the table to speak on the issues that we face. I will bring in engineering majors, comp-sci majors, environmental majors to work on the actual city issues that we face to increase transparency and to bring an innovation approach to sustainability. In thinking about making change, yes, I know what it means to sit in front of Becky Blank. I know what it means to sit in front of Lori Reeser. I know what it means to sit in front of Carl Schultz, the Vice Chancellor of Provost. I've been in these conversations. I've been in these conversations with the city council members, with Mayor Satya Rose Conaway, and I know what it means to have them say no, to have them say this can't happen, and still make it happen. So therefore, you can trust that, yes, I'm here to, yes, represent, but also amplify and include your voice. And I want to build a coalition of students where they know what a city council, when they know what a city alder is, and when they want to be involved in making the city that we can call home.
Juliana and Ayomi, both of you have robust environmental or sustainable practices as part of your platform. Ayomi, your environmental justice platform includes a plan to power State Street with our feet, an effort to coordinate urban farming, have accountability for PFAS contamination, and a plan to save the bees. Juliana, your platform includes stopping runoff into Lake Mendota, reducing salt usage in the winter, installing rain gardens, and community compost bins. And both of you support the Green New Deal and want to see free bus transportation in Madison. Could you tell us a little bit more about your environmental and sustainability plans and how those plans intersect with other policy areas? Let's start with Ayomi. You have 3 minutes, Ayomi, starting now.
Yeah, so environmental justice it's such an amazing conversation that we're having today because typically the way it's addressed, especially to communities of color, as a way of, oh, there's police, there's this and this going on, but also the world is ending because of climate change. And it creates a sense of burden that we already have. But we need to look at innovative ways to communicate with communities of color. So talking about environmental practices that we see right here, right now in our community that would only benefit us rather than burden us. So we look at the lakes, right? And we see those algae blooms that make it so disgusting to walk on or swim in. Using algae blooms to create biofuel energy that can then power electricity in buildings. Those are the innovative and novel ideas that we need to bring forth. We can talk about how there needs to be lights on Lakeshore. How are you going to do that? Using football paths, using energy that we are creating ourselves, energy that's around us, and talking about ways in which it can be sustainable. So, of course, for the Green New Deal, of course, I'm no fossil fuels. AOC is a champion of this, and I love her. And so, I think, when talking about environmental justice, it needs to shift to also talking about the intersectionality relating to social justice. And the way I look at, for example, urban farming is a way of economic justice because it's like, one, we are not only teaching youth, especially, and that should be our priority, not just students, but youth in general. As an MMSD student, you see so many high school students, and we recently just spoke to high schoolers about ways in which we can empower them to run for office and just advocate for their community. We're using conversations like urban gardening to teach them about food, talk about zero waste, and also talk about ways in which they can empower themselves economically by using their land and using the knowledge that they get from roots as well as other urban farming around the area, FH King that UW also is a part of. And so I think that's the intersectionality that we need to see more of in legislation. And being in conversations with so many organizers about this, you hear so many innovative ideas, but you're also able to talk and understand about land and the power of land and building wealth. So when we're talking about economic justice, we also need to talk about how that really means to gain wealth and be able to pass it on to our future. And so I guess that's, everything connects in that way, but economic justice is what it can become.
All right, thank you, Ayomi. We'll circle back around to you in just a minute. Juliana, you have 5 minutes for your rebuttal and response to the question.
Sure. So I completely and totally am all for the new innovative practices that we can bring to City Council for sustainability. Oftentimes we view sustainability as this broad thing that is at the federal level, but really it's in our homes and in our own city. So unfortunately, when talking about things such as footfall, that's extremely expensive, and you would be able to get the same amount of energy at 1/8 of the cost with solar panels. And if one really cares about saving the bees, one would know that the city of Madison passed some of the strongest ordinances in the nation on saving the bees 6 years ago. So we need to be, yes, looking at innovative practices, but also looking at just like easy stuff. This year, my apartment building did not recycle anything during the entire move out process during August. And I know many District 8 constituents can say the same thing. So yes, I want to increase recycling and have community compost bins that are available in every single apartment and housing building. Furthermore, I totally would like to, we pride ourselves on these lakes that are not that fun to swim in. So honestly, easy solution. When we have developers, make sure that they don't use runoff into our lakes. Make sure that we have proper leaf removal. Make sure that we have sustainable salt and snow removal. These are just like simple, basic things that we can do to help our city. Furthermore, we need free buses in Madison. Free 80 buses for all, free number 2, free number 10 buses for everybody, especially down on Southeast campus. And because like this is like an easy way, again, in which we can get to where we need to go that is also sustainable. Also, I will advocate for students to opt in to the Madison Gas and Electric bill, in which they can, for only $20 extra a month, they can have their energy powered by solar panels, in which I will also advocate for apartment buildings and university housing to opt into this option with Madison Gas and Electric. At the end of the day, yes, this is an intersectionality conversation. And actually, I sat on a panel with the UW-Madison Sustainability on amplifying BIPOC voices in sustainability, because this is a conversation in which we need to bring Indigenous people and people that are most affected into these conversations.
So both of you support fair and affordable housing. As you have pointed out, UW students are one of the many groups, particularly—
Hang on there, Will. Sorry to cut you off. We skipped Ayomi's response there. Sorry about that, Ayomi. Sorry about that, Will. Ayomi, you've got 2 minutes on the clock for your response to the prior question.
Thank you so much. Yes, just kind of going on, one of the big issues that Madison is talking about that wasn't addressed was PFAS. PFAS is affecting our water contaminations right now. So we need accountability from the state, from our city, and that's something that I plan to do, as well as creating a teen center. So that's the biggest thing that we have been advocating for years, is talking about a teen center. And this teen center I want to have downtown area, so that we have programs talking about green energy, sustainability, will also involve what the youth is visioned for in terms of development. We'll also be having classes that, one, talk about urban gardening, two, talk about ways in which we can implement green energy around us, creating bus barns, having more bubblers, as Wisconsins like to say, and looking at ways in which we can turn our energy to become more electric, of course, using more solar panels. And I know that so many alders have recently been involved in green power programs. And so, of course, I would be encouraging and advocating for that as well. But I think, we have to definitely look at and be in contact with organizations that have been doing this work. So I've already been working with Sunrise Movement. I plan on continuing to work with Sunrise Movement and other green organizations that have been doing this work and writing more legislation that has more community aspect and is rooted in programs our youth need, programs not just for students, but for everyone in Madison, to talk about our future, because our future is green.
All right. Thank you both. And sorry about that again, Ayomi. So now our next question is that both of you support fair and affordable housing as part of your platforms. And you've both pointed out that UW students are one of the many groups that are particularly susceptible to predatory housing practices. How do you propose addressing Madison's affordable housing crisis with a special eye towards your District 8 constituents? And we're going to begin with Juliana this time, who will have 3 minutes to respond.
Yes, so affordable housing in District 8 is twofold. You have, one, a choice between an overpriced and overly bougie and just overly expensive place, or you have another option that's more affordable but run down. And students shouldn't have to make this choice. We deserve in District 8 to live in a place that is affordable, safe, and livable. The average cost for on-campus housing is $1,100 per month. $1,100. And I myself was a victim of predatory practices in my first year at Madison, where my roommates in Celery and I kind of just jumped into a lease at the James that was over $1,000. And the entire year, I worked 2 jobs just to pay off this house. So these are the predatory practices that we need to work against. Protect students from predatory practices, secure funding for affordable housing, and attack affordable housing through an equity lens. So in thinking about affordable housing, we need to look at it as a toolbox, not one solution. It's not a one-stop solution. So we can implement low-income housing tax credit, payment in lieu option, and density bonuses. We can also have direct intervention methods such as land banking and community opportunity to purchase, which essentially enforces them to have affordable housing units that are under 30% average median income in District 8. For protecting students from predatory practices, we need to, I will connect students and young people in District 8 with building inspectors, which the city building inspectors, essentially, their job is literally to go into your house and look to see, is your heat working? Are there rodents in this apartment? And if they do not meet the certain criteria, and the landlord has 24 hours to fix it, or else they'll receive a hefty fine. Additionally, I will work within the city to provide free legal representation to all District 8 constituents, and work with the Tenant Resource Center and UW Law School to make this happen. At the end of the day, this affordable housing is something that we need to work with the university housing and luxury apartments to make them lower the prices of their units, because essentially them having high prices is driving up the housing prices in Madison. And I've already done this with working with university administrator and housing director Jeff Novak, who in our conversations, we're working on reducing the costs for housing.
All right. Thank you, Juliana. Now, Ayomi, you will have 5 minutes to respond to the initial question and to Juliana's response. Go right ahead.
So many students, especially after their first 2 years maybe of living in the dorms, go right into those houses, and they are so overpriced. I'm in one right now. University housing, especially those dorms, is instrumental in talking about this problem of affordable housing, because of how expensive their prices are. And so therefore, many landlords felt like they could also raise their prices as well. And so we need to talk about tenant protections, and how can we do affordable housing gaps? How can we formalize contracting policies on fair housing, empowering tenants through readily accessible resources? There are about 2,000 cases filed of homelessness within Dane County. 800 of those are on the priority list, not including those who are couch surfing, as many students we know are. And talking about ending criminalization of homelessness. As someone that comes from an immigrant family, regarding tenants' problems is something that really hits home, especially when we look at what happens when a landlord gets upset that you are talking about different problems you're facing within your apartment. It's scary to feel like, as an international student, as an immigrant student, that you're going to be evicted, that you're going to be deported for speaking up on your basic rights. And so we need to give people a sense of security by helping them have resources readily available. And talk about the city right now is trying to build a new jail instead of talking about housing initiatives and building stability for those in need. Some of the solutions that we need to talk about when talking about affordable housing is looking at creative ways that we can place people in homes, such as creating tiny homes. And it was so exciting. About a month ago, we were able to actually build tiny homes here in Madison. Hands-on experience, working with people who are actually doing what we need to see happen in legislation firsthand, and hearing conversations with those who are homeless about their needs and ways in which they would like to see the improvements made to their city. And that's something that you can only get by doing activist work. And Impact Demand has been doing it all summer long, to the point where we have holes in our shoes from doing it. We also plan on working with the urban leagues, such as UW-Madison, talking about micro lending programs and affordable housing. So incorporating federal programs such as the CDFI and statewide programs such as the WHEDA. Because right now, if we're talking about affordable housing, we also have to talk about the budget. There's a deficit going on. Where is this money coming from? Right? And so using federal programs like that, state programs, will help, as well as using TIF. So a perfect example of TIF is the Lucky Building. And, in conversation with not only Max, our current alder, but also Scott Resnick, other county members, we were able to see ways in which we can look at creative and affordable housing, what worked, what didn't work. And those are the relationships that, we have and we plan to implement when elected. I also plan on implementing a vacancy tax and reclaiming vacant properties and converting them so that we house people. Land banking, HUD, those are also solutions that we plan to implement. And looking at multi-level family homes, townhouses, co-ops, working with the law school. And I was actually talking to so many members of people in the law school to get them jobs right now. We're like, we need you here. We need you in tenant resources. And so these initiatives that we're talking about are also great ways for students to get jobs right after college, because here are the problems in our city, and I know that you need a job. So how do I help you? How do I help you get a job? How do I help the city? And it's building those relationships, becoming a pipeline. And those are just a couple of amazing solutions that we've talked about all summer long. Before this, again, as I mentioned, we've been doing this work since I was in high school. So the conversations that we have, I've been having for years. And I think that's why we're seeing so much support for the campaign. It's because the city sees the leadership, they also see the innovative ideas, and those ideas can't be copied. Those ideas can't be, manipulated in ways in which we've talked about. There's so many articles, if you look my name up, about this issue. And so, with that, I'll just yield my time.
All right. Thank you, Ayomi. Juliana, you will have 2 more minutes to rebut.
So, one, I just want to address a couple of things. One, the jail is not a city level issue, that is a county level issue. 2, you need to be very careful about using about TIF, because essentially if the TIF funds get into the wrong hands, some city council members have used TIF in order to funnel it into malls and other things that are not for housing, which we're actually trying to help. Additionally, you need to be very careful about using the vacancy tax, because it can actually drive out and hurt small businesses, which we are trying to help. In terms of guaranteed housing, yes, we totally need guaranteed housing, and I'm fully prepared to work with Porchlight and Occupy Madison, which has been funneling tiny homes in Madison, and connecting students with the Tenant Resource Center. But look, folks, at the end of the day, the best way to achieve affordable housing is to lower the cost of university housing. Is to lower the cost of Hub. Right now, there's a Hub 2 development that is that they're trying to look to pass, which has no spaces for affordable housing, and it's completely unsustainable. So issues like this, we need to make sure that they don't pass. And I will be completely against, I will completely prioritize affordable housing units over luxury developments. And furthermore, I will continue my conversations with Jeff Novak and the Housing and Dining Committee in ASM in order to lower the cost of university housing. At the end of the day, in District 8, we deserve to have a place that is affordable and safe and livable. And when you vote for me, I've been doing this work, and I know that when you vote for me, I've been doing this work, and I know that we can achieve affordable housing in Madison.
Juliana and Ayomi, thank you so much for your time today. Unfortunately, we are running up on the hour. We're going to leave time for your closing statements, as well as the listener comment we got just a moment ago. But we have one final pre-prepared question for you today. Madison's leadership is currently considering a resolution that would ban the use of tear gas as a crowd control method. But the MPD argues that while tear gas is an imperfect solution, it provides the best route for officers to handle large-scale events when violence breaks out without resorting to more violent means. Now, as protesters and police reform advocates yourself, where do you both stand on the proposed banning of tear gas? And if you support a wholesale ban, how do you believe the department should handle future large-scale events that have the potential to turn violent? Ayomi, we're starting out with you on this one. You have 3 minutes.
Yeah, so as an organizer here in Madison, but also we build national coalitions. We've gone to DC as well as Colorado. I've been tear gassed multiple times, and I definitely feel like a ban is something we've been advocating for, because it is so harmful. And I don't think that people, unless you really have felt the effects of it, understand how you can't control crowds that way, how actually using tear gas incites more violence, incites more behavior in which they're trying to kind of contain. And so that's something that, I felt personally. I think if we're talking about crowd control, it's a very touchy topic, especially because if we look at policing right now, it's not in any way geared towards safety of people, rather than talking about ways in which they can take more activists to jail. I personally have so many friends right now who are currently in the jail system. And so when we talk about that, we also have to talk about, people, how it affects people, how it's not used in other countries because of how harmful it is, especially if you have asthma. My younger brother, for example, has asthma, and he can't come out to protest because of that fear. So, as an organizer, it's definitely something that we talk about often, and we are planning on writing legislation, being a part of that discussion. Impact Demand has definitely done a lot of work to mobilize people to be in those rooms when it comes to writing legislation, empowering others to, speak up, as well as, make sure that they're running for different offices and in conversations, committee meetings. So the Civilian Oversight Board, for example, which will probably be addressing many of those issues, because it's horrible. Being tear gassed is not fun. It is not something that you want to post on social media. It's not a trend. It's real. And doing the work isn't always pretty, but we move forward. And yeah.
All right, Juliana, you have 5 minutes for your rebuttal and response to the question. Oh, hang on. Our moderator has not unmuted you yet.
Can you unmute yourself? It looks like you clicked the mute.
Sorry. Okay, here we go. Yeah, so, right. Talking about tear gas. I think my friend Tara, and for organizing purposes, Cherry, has had a wonderful story to this. The answer that I would give police officers is, do you know what it feels like to be tear gassed, to have tear gas running in your eyes, and be holding a 16-year-old boy in your hands, trying to get the tear gas off of him, and trying to take out his contacts that are stuck in his eyes, him screaming and yelling for help. Yes, I completely support banning tear gas, and this is something that Ayomi and I can probably both agree on in these policy choices. Something that I would like to shift to that isn't talked about enough, though, in terms of MPD, is the toxic drinking culture on campus. So in terms of the toxic drinking culture, it leads to a lot of cases of sexual assault in which 1 in 4 women at UW-Madison have experienced sexual assault. This is something that is horrendous and needs to change. I plan to grant more 18+ licenses and have more abilities for and have more diversity in entertainment, such as ethnic dance clubs, such as poetry lounges, such as music events, so that we can walk around on campus and at night and have options for us that we're not forced to drink. Additionally, I was speaking to a District 8 resident the other day, and they told me that when they're on campus late at night, they lived down on Lakeshore Path, right? And every day they had to choose, do I walk home late at night, or do I just stay home? Do I go to my extracurricular activities that I really want to go to and risk being unsafe? And knowing what it feels like to clutch your keys in your hand and your phone in the other, calling your sister to make sure that you get to your destination safe. So I 100% would like to add more lighting and advocate for the university to add lighting to Lakeshore Path, and also to the Spring Street area that is way too dark at night. And in this, I will definitely work with Sustainable Madison Committee to have LED safe lights for this area. Yes, so at the end of the day, I think that Ayomi and I can both agree on this point. One other point that I wanted to talk about that we haven't talked about yet is this pandemic with COVID-19. So we've all experienced the stresses of COVID-19, And definitely it's one of my platform's point of COVID-19 relief and recovery, because we need to, as a city, work to ensure that students are having a safe experiences in which they don't feel as though they need to, in which they, and like drive down the pandemic at a city level. So we can certainly work within our city budget. As a finance major, I know what it means to work within our city budget, and also to work within our city budget because we are in a budget deficit, as said before. And I know what it means to work to allocate our tax and tuition dollars properly to ensure that we address the root cause issues that students are facing. Additionally, like I've been outspoken advocate for such issues in instituting the moral restart, which will help decrease student tuition dollars, have more COVID-safe remedies on campus, and additionally just make our experiences here better in terms of COVID, to have pass-fail grading as well. So at the end of the day, I think that, yeah, well, we're definitely on the same page with banning tear gas. We need to address the toxic drinking culture on this campus and work to eliminate cases of sexual assault and move such cases to a place where students feel safe to call for help. That's at the end of the day. Thank you so much. I yield the rest of my time.
All right, Ayomi, you have 2 minutes for your follow-up, beginning now.
Yeah, I just want to talk a little bit about Health Amnesty. We're really excited and grateful to have Yogev, who was instrumental in bringing Health Amnesty to ASM, to UW-Madison, join our team and help write the legislation that we already have, just ready to implement it at a citywide level. So he was vice president of ASM. We know that there are about 1 in 5 students considering calling for help for an intoxicated friend, but about 1 in every 25 actually does, according to Cornell. Implementing Health Amnesty, doubles students feeling safe to ask questions regarding medical concerns and having educational resources, because having an alcohol EDU isn't effective in a culture rooted in drinking. So we need to, make sure that we are prioritizing safety of those in need, especially our students and constituents, which really relates to our district. Our district, our students, our district is youth. But having policies and writing policies that's not just about UW, because that's a transient population. Groups start and groups end all the time. But having an organization, having policies that are rooted in the community, rooted in youth, not just UW. And as an MMSD student, that's something that I plan on implementing. Things that talk to students, talk to high school students, talk to elementary school students. My brother is at West right now. This is my community. This is my home. And I want to write policies that are real and relate to the life and the world around me. Thank you.
All right, thank you both. And we are now going to pivot to our viewer/listener questions. And it looks like we have one coming in from a viewer on YouTube who asks both candidates, an alder serving on a plan commission cannot necessarily deny a proposal just based on affordability. How would you work around this? And candidates, because we're running a bit short on time here, we're going to give you each 2 minutes to respond to this one. And let's start with Juliana.
Sure. So thank you so much to the viewer that posed their question and engaging in our democracy. 1, in terms of the Plan Commission, I want to add a young person seat to Plan Commission because much of the issues that we face are at Plan Commission, and we need to have the student voices in Plan Commission. Thus, being involved with holding core spaces, which is the developers for the Hub 2 development accountable. I've been extremely, extremely frustrated with how Plan Commission has a list of 23 standards of review that they use to review properties. Therefore, I think we need to we need to know that these standards of review are, one, subjective, and two, we need to ensure that these developments are meeting the city's plan in general. I understand that we can't deny it based off of affordability, but it's definitely something that affects us. And plan commissioners are human too. So if we come out in droves and speak about affordable housing, then they will take into account with these standards of review and look at it through a critical lens to ensure that we're meeting the city's plans for sustainability, meeting our city's plans for having just a good place that's an equitable place that is not harming the current neighbors in this area. And I certainly plan to continue working with the Campus Neighborhood Association in working on the standards review, working on the steering committees for the Plan Commission, and ensuring that we are prioritizing developments that will assist those living in District 8.
All right. Thank you for that. And Ayomi, you now have 2 minutes to respond to the same question. Go ahead.
Yeah. So the first thing that I would do is talk about implementing an independent audit and getting alders on board. And of course, I'm already doing that. And, talking about where the money is, because if we're talking about affordability, talking about this budget deficit, we need to understand where that money is coming from to talk about these affordable housing projects. Defunding the police is a way to do that. Defunding them because they have no reason to have an increase, which they got this last budget, and implementing more citywide projects and initiatives. Nipping the idea in the bud of affordability will be like the death of progression. Because everything costs money: electric buses, free buses, football paths, housing. But we need these things. And so, discussing the budget is something that I plan to do. We know that the AMI report, the way we look about rent, for example, isn't accurate, is not sustainable of like the world around us. And so that's something else we need to begin conversation about. I also am a member of CANA and I've been working with them prior to the campaign. And so I think, talking about affordable housing, especially in our district, is a conversation that needs more BIPOC. It needs a more equitable viewpoint. And that's something that, I definitely plan to include in legislation. And I've been doing for a while now. So finding out where that money is, doing that citywide audit, and then continuing to work with nonprofits, as we talked about micro lending programs, we talked about TIF earlier, all these different things, and ways in which we can pull monies from the state, from federal organizations like the CDIF, so that we can fund more affordable housing initiatives.
I'd like to thank you both for your time today and for being a part of this inaugural debate. As we close, I'd like to give each of you 3 minutes for closing remarks. Ayomi, we'll start with you. Your time starts now.
Thank you guys so much for taking the time and reaching out and talking about these issues that matter to me, that I care about. I'm running for District 8 because it's a place I've been happy to call home for years. I went to high school just down the street, and I understand that due to the highly transient nature of the population in District 8, being that it is mostly campus and UW students, having youth on the table, having someone that is a community organizer that has built coalitions not only here, but at a national level, and understanding that policies need to be rooted in the community is something that I'll bring to the table. As a youth activist, as an organizer, I believe that legislation needs to work for residents beyond my term, leave a lasting legacy that empowers other Black women, like we're seeing Kamala Harris run for office, and make the changes necessary that we need in our community. By writing legislation is not only validating the work that we've been doing for years, but it makes a strong stance against the injustices that we're seeing today, such as police violence, police brutality, how affordable housing, talking about initiatives that incorporate intersectionality, like we mentioned earlier, environmental intersectionality and social justice work. Those are my priority, and prioritizing students throughout it all. We need better housing, a Green New Deal, jails, talking about jails, and police reform, food security, and so many other things that the marginalized communities have been facing for years. By running for office, I hope to just empower those, leave a lasting legacy that illustrates an alder needs to work primarily towards the betterment of our community who need these legislations the most, who have often been ignored. That's BIPOC, that's LGBTQ, that's disabled, that's immigrants, that's you, and that's me. It is uplifting those in need that our needs will be met. By running, I want to demonstrate that the type of person we should be representing constituents is someone that has a passion, but someone that has a plan, is rooted in the community, builds coalitions, has been in contact with these groups beyond just George Floyd's protests, has done this work because they know this community. They met the community members, they know all these organizers, and that they're willing to work towards writing bipartisan legislation as well as radical legislation, if you will, just legislation that has that urgency and has that necessity that is applicable to people no matter what you look like. Because at the end of the day, the policies that I want will help everyone. The policies that BIPOC wants affects everyone. And so with that, I just want to thank you guys, and please check out my website, ayomiforalder.vote, and all our social media platforms, Instagram, Twitter, Facebook. Thank you.
All right, thank you, Ayomi. Juliana, you also have 3 minutes for your closing remarks, starting now.
Right. So again, thank you, WORT-FM, for having us here today. And thank you for everyone again for engaging in local government. So what I want to leave you with is part of having a passion and a plan is being able to execute said plan. I've laid out a platform that is truly for the youth. And when I say things, everything that I say that I said in this debate for affordable housing, for reimagining public safety, for sustainability, and just for students, I say it, and I've helped done it, and I will continue to do it within City Council. We will raise these issues and ensure that our voices are put to the forefront. Too often, students are looked at as this transient population that comes and goes every 4 years. We need to end this view, because us as students, as young people, are a permanent and integral part to Madison's culture. I plan to reconcile the movement on the street within City Council and implement legislative changes that will, yes, actually make real change in Madison. And I really mean it. When you vote for me, you will see the changes that we need to make in Madison. At the end of the day, when I was thinking about why am I doing this? Why am I running for District 8? I honestly the first word that comes to mind is community. Going back to earlier, I came to UW-Madison holding this high hopes and dreams for all the opportunities here. And I've also experienced firsthand the hardships that we have here. The thing is that I still have hope. And I know that together we can make a Madison that everyone can call home, that everyone can come here and call home. Therefore, I'm just so thankful and excited to have been working already within campus and within City Council to implement said changes, and will continue to do so. I've said it before, but at the end of the day, this is not about Juliana getting into office. This is about having a Madison, having a community that values students, that values young people, that values the innovative and new practices that we can bring here. And we will build a future that is truly diverse, welcoming, and inclusive. Thank you so much for having me here. And yes, I hope on April 6th you certainly vote for me. Please reach out. And I'm so thankful and honored to hear from all of you. Thank you.
All right. Ayomi, Juliana, thank you both so much for joining us this evening. And a special thanks to those of you watching at home. Just a heads up, our next debate will be District 16. That's Friday at 5:30 p.m., followed by District 2 at 7. I'm Jonah Chester.
And from the Daily Cardinal, I'm Will Choji. Jade Iseri Ramos is the producer of all WORT debates this spring election season. Shallie Pittman is the news director at WORT, and we thank them both for all their hard work. I hope everybody out there has a great night.